So with that dinner we made the other night, top sirloin and bruschetta, the green vegetables was collard greens. I strongly recommend trying this if you haven't had greens. They're really quite tasty. Okay, this method works with a lot of green leafy vegetables. We're just using collards here. That's what it looks like. Right, so down at the bottom that stalk is pretty thick. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut the top off, and then once we've got the top, which is mostly leafy, cut off, we're going to get into where the stalks are and just cut the leaf off around the stalk. We don't want that big woody stalk in the middle of this, because that's not the texture you're going for in greens. So this is that same peeled and vacuum sealed garlic product that I use quite a bit. I'm just going to give this a really fine mince, and this is going to go in actually before the greens to sort of flavor everything that the greens are going to pick up. Okay, it's flavor time, and the flavor for greens in most cases is a pork product. I'm using smoked bacon here, Applewood smoked bacon. Traditionally you might use a cheaper cut of the pig, but those are kind of hard to find in my grocery store, and I find bacon a little easier to deal with anyway. Okay, it's time to bring the flavor to the party, and we're going to start with the bacon, and then the whole idea here is to get this bacon cooking to the point that we are rendering the fat, not unlike what we've done with some other things. So we want the fat to render, and once the fat has started to render, we're going to go ahead and put the garlic in here as well and get that starting to release some of its flavor into that bacon fat. Next into the pool is some vinegar. I like to use malt vinegar, but you could use champagne vinegar or regular white vinegar or whatever vinegar floats your boat. But traditionally with greens you're going to want to use some vinegar. And then just to get the steaming going a little better so that you can wilt the greens, we're going to add maybe 3-4 tablespoons of water. So it's time for greens. You just bring them to the pot, put them in, and cover the pot to start the wilting process before you even try to mix everything up. And then eventually we'll come back and mix everything up and let it wilt a little bit more. And no kidding, that's the end of it. That's how easy greens are to make. Side note, you could use mustard greens for this. You could use baby spinach for this. Really sort of any green leafy vegetable that's a little bit bitter works here. Also note that we have not salted or peppered or added hot sauce to this, and that's because people's condiment choices for greens tend to be a little different. So I recommend just having those at the table and let people choose how they want to dress their greens. Okay, there you see the finished greens with that dinner. These make an excellent side dish. That was one bunch of greens, and it essentially turned into enough greens for 2 people for one meal. So you're going to want to do 2 or 3 bunches of greens if you're feeding 4 or 5 people. But greens are actually quite delicious once you cook them with a pork product and add a little bit of vinegar. So greens get a bad rap, especially by people who haven't had them. They're delicious, they're super easy to make, and it's a way to get green vegetables into people who might not otherwise eat them. So I do recommend trying this. It's actually quite delicious.